Good evening. Welcome to this evening's edition of the Rich Urban Show at the Vision Root channel. I'm your host, Rich Urban, coming to you from historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Tonight's episode is entitled, The Returning Lord Should Not Judge Humankind with His Rod of Iron. I'd like to start with our scripture reading from the words of Reverend Sun Myung Moon. It's from Chun Sung Young, page 925. Humankind as a whole must wake up. The teaching of the founder of the Unitarian Church is the truth that will save the world. It is the word of true love and life that the whole of humanity needs for eternity. When the returning Lord comes to save the world, he should not judge humankind with his rod of iron. By hitting people, he would not be able to bring even one person to complete submission. The mother's hand is gnarled and bent like the back of a toad because of the labor she went through for her child. The mother's sacrificial love has the power to turn around her disobedient child and make him repent. This is not possible using a stick. Without true love, the unification of heaven and earth would be impossible, even for God, who is the great King of judgment and who can freely lead heaven and earth as he pleases. Difficulties are not a problem for true love. True love has the strength to go on even while you cast away your life. So that's our reading. So I'd like to start out mentioning, so some people are wondering why I'm doing this series on Pastor Hyungjin Moon. Well, or about the, sanctuary. The reason I'm doing the series because I care. Because God asked me to do it. Father asked me to do it. He asked me to speak out in love. I pray and hope for Pastor's success. That's why I'm doing it. Okay? So I support Pastor Hyungjin Moon. We understand the Father appointed him as the inheritor. So if you care about somebody, you just say, oh, well, who cares? No, you try to help out. Okay? So that's the spirit of it. This is a very, very important topic tonight. We see, Father's words right there. Interestingly, using the word rod of iron. So tonight, I'd like to read from the Bible and from the Divine Principle.
Matthew 14:1, Contemporary English Version. About this time, Herod the ruler heard the news about Jesus and told his officials, "This is John the Baptist. He has come back from death, and that's why he has the power to work these miracles." Herod had earlier arrested John and had him chained and put in prison. He did this because John had told him, "It isn't right for you to take Herodias, the wife of your brother Philip." Herod wanted to kill John, but the people thought John was a prophet, and Herod was afraid of what they might do. When Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced for the guests. She pleased Herod so much that he swore to give her whatever she wanted. But the girl's mother told her to say, "Here on a platter, I want the head of John the Baptist." The king was sorry for what he had said, but he did not want to break the promise he had made in front of his guests. So he ordered a guard to go to the prison and cut off John's head. It was taken on a platter to the girl, and she gave it to her mother. John's followers took his body and buried it. Then they told Jesus what had happened. Exposition of Divine Principle, page 127. Indeed, John the Baptist should have been Jesus' foremost apostle, zealously proclaiming the gospel of Jesus. Yet, due to his blindness, he did not fulfill his mission. His precious life, which was meant to be offered for Jesus' sake, was eventually lost over a relatively insignificant affair. And then they refer here in Mark to the same incident about John the Baptist. So, what are we saying here? Well, John the Baptist got involved in affairs that he shouldn't have really been involved in. So, what I'm talking about here is it really the most important thing to be talking a lot about political affairs, about George Soros, and especially about that, and the different things the government is doing or not doing? Although those can be considered important in their own right, they're not the key point. So John the Baptist got involved in things that weren't the key point, and eventually he didn't stay with Jesus, and eventually, sadly, he died. He was killed. And the principle indicates that he lost his life over a relatively insignificant affair. Well, I feel that the focus, of Pastor Hyungjin on all the political things is not the key point. And as I mentioned before, Father always taught about the religious aspects as the key point. Even in the many, many American Family Coalition, AFC conferences, Father always had the reading of the Word. I went to several of those conferences in Washington, D.C., and the Word was always read. Always the words on family, the words on absolutely good sex, and family restoration were always read, even though they were political conferences with political leaders. So I think this point should not be lost on us. And again, I'm saying these things out of love because we want Pastor Hyungjin to succeed. Doesn't he have to follow the words of his father, Sun Myung Moon? So some people might say, you're so presumptuous. Okay, well, of course, if you think that's what I am, I guess I am, according to you. Anyway, I'm following my conscience and what God and True Father asked me to do. So I'm making this viewpoint known, and I hope it guides Pastor Hyungjin. And in fact, I know that a lot of people are thinking similar things. Why don't we have Father's word? In fact, they've told me that. They're just afraid to say it. Or, basically just that. They're afraid to say it. And didn't many people also think that Hak Jahan was going off? But most likely, or not, or definitely, they didn't say anything about it because they didn't want to rock the boat either.
I was actually present as a Hundake in Alaska on August 2nd, 2004. I had the privilege to go there for a fishing tournament representing our region in a small group setting with True Father in Kodiak, Alaska. While there, Father received a report that a Korean second gen had died in military service. And I made a transcription of the translation of this Hundake on my FM radio transmitter. So I have in my transcription, another person did not follow direction, and then they went to the military, following their own direction, and then they went to spirit world. That's why I give direction, and then all people unite. I don't need to call you one by one. You leaders prepare and develop all these ideas. I give you direction. Do you understand that? So I remember Father was upset about this, that the family or the person had gone against his direction, that the second gen entered the military, and he was killed. So I also remember either, I'm not sure if it was in the same, in the speech I read or during this time in Kodiak, it may well have been. Father said, I'm pretty sure it was during that time in Kodiak, that he had done all kinds of service, from working on the docks to every kind of different kind of job, but he did not enter the military, serve in the military, because he did not want to have to kill anybody. So why did I mention this? Well, this is different than the spirit that Pastor Hyungjin is portraying. I know I said that it may be good for youth to join the military. I'm not going to tell people what to do, but I am going to convey what I heard True Father say. And it's different from what Pastor Hyungjin is saying. I was there, in Father's presence. So I do want to share that. And I believe pastors should, stop promoting the rod of iron as the key point in the providence. Because Father's made it clear, that's not about weapons, defensive weapons or otherwise. I know everything's supposed to be defensive, although sometimes, as I pointed out before, it seems to come across a little differently. But that's not the key point. If he keeps promoting these kind of things, someone will get hurt unnecessarily. Let me give you one example. So I was and this came up months before I decided to do these videos. But, I didn't say anything. I felt, better not saying, I might. Anyway, the same kind of thing, people think something, but they're afraid to say it. Okay, so I was at an event at Sanctuary, and I noticed one of the second gen had a pistol in his pants. Okay, fine. There's nothing wrong with concealed carry. I guess it wasn't concealed very well, obviously. And it was stuck in the back of his pants, like in the far rear. I guess, that's okay to carry a pistol if you want. But apparently, I don't know, I didn't check super closely, but it looked like there wasn't even a holster. That seems a little careless to me, you know? So that's one thing. I also want to point out in the next clip, I do want to play one clip.
I understood his main point correctly. So what he's worried about is that we're going to be actually bearing weapons and having weapons around the house, and in reality what happens is that there's accidents and people die of accidents because of accidental discharge. And now he's been living in a society without guns, and let's say he's going to start bearing guns, and he would have to teach his children, and his children would have to teach their children about how to control guns. But still, he is anxious about the possibility that there will be death due to accidental discharge. And his question is, do you think that is a possibility?
That's the whole point of being a king. The whole point of being a king is to do dangerous things and have dangerous things because you're the sovereign. And that's part of God's freedom and responsibility that He's giving you. So the whole point of freedom and responsibility and free will is that as God's creation, who receives God's gift of free will and responsibility, I choose to love that gift from God even if it kills me. As a child of God who's inherited God's sovereignty, I choose to love the gift that God gives me even if it kills my children. As a child of God who's received God's gift of freedom and responsibility, I choose to love that gift that God gave me even if it kills my wife. This is what God is teaching us. He is teaching us that we must choose to love Him and love what He gives us. And when we love the things that God gives us and we love the kingship that He gives us, then that love creates the kingdom of heaven on earth.
Okay, let's pause that. So, Cookchem says, well, I was a little surprised with this. So when I heard it the first time, I thought he was going to say, well, yes, when you have guns around the house, make sure before you handle it, the chamber is empty and that you're pointing in a safe direction, keep your finger off the trigger. And if you're not carrying the weapon, make sure it's locked up. But instead he said, even if it kills your children or your wife. That seems wrong. Point I'm mentioning is exactly what I said earlier. Is this really the main focus of God's providence? Again, I'm a gun owner, in case people were wondering. And, I'm learning and practicing, to use a gun better at the range and things like that. But the point is, I was kind of surprised by that answer myself. You judge yourself, about what you think of it. But again, I've noticed some things that bother me. Like I gave the example of, apparently, like carrying without a holster. I think that's a little unusual. And it seemed careless. That's why I bring it up. And, that could be, something could happen. And also emphasizing the guns all the time, putting it out into the atmosphere, making it very, very public about the rod of iron and about, opposing despots and everything. I mean, in itself, I guess that's not a bad thing. And certainly we should be ready to defend our country. And I agree that's, why we have the Second Amendment, or defend our sovereignty. But focusing on that as the main thing, that's a problem. That was not Father's focus. As I said in the beginning, as I said, the returning Lord, going back to that, when the returning Lord comes to save the world, He should not judge humankind with His rod of iron. By hitting people, He would not be able to bring even one person to complete submission. So I'm going to leave my message at that tonight. Give the word there to True Father. I think these things are things for reflection. I do want the second king to succeed. For Young Jin Moon, or you know, who people, yes, Pastor Young Jin Moon. And we all have our three kingships, by the way. I'm going to address that in another topic. Of course, we talk about that in the pledge, the three great kingships. So we should all succeed in that ourselves as well. So I want you to be blessed tonight. Do be blessed. I thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Rich Urban Show. The topic again is the returning Lord should not judge humankind with his rod of iron. Be blessed. Until next time, this is Rich Urban reporting to you from historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Good night.